Hi, everyone, and welcome to our virtual project information meeting for the 46th Avenue Sidewalk Improvement Project. The project we're talking about tonight runs between 49th Street North and 37th Street North. I'm Tony Fabrizio with Pinellas County Communications, and I'll be your moderator. In a moment, I'll introduce you to Chris Moore, who is our assistant to the county administrator for the Lellman community, and he'll make some opening comments. But first, let me give you a quick overview of how the meeting will go. After you hear from Chris, we'll play a recorded presentation that will go into detail about the project. We'll then introduce our panelists who are here tonight to answer your questions and listen to your feedback. There are three ways to ask a question. First, you can type your question into the Q&A box on your screen. Second, you can click on the raised hand icon if you want to speak. And third, if you called in, you can hit *9 on your keypad to be placed into a queue. For anyone who is new to Zoom, you can find the Q&A and raised hand buttons by moving your cursor to the bottom of the screen to bring up a toolbar. On some mobile devices, the toolbar may be at the top of the screen. We are going to take the typed questions first. You can type in a question at any time, and those will be read aloud and answered when we get to that portion of the program. If you're watching the Zoom meeting live from the Lellman Exchange, you can simply ask a staff member to assist you. Once all of the typed questions have been asked, we'll next recognize anyone who has called in by phone. Then, for as long as time permits, we'll recognize those who have raised their hands. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available within a few days on the project website. The project website is the same location where you went to register. That's pinellascounty.org/45av sidewalk. We'll share that on the screen at near the end of the meeting. At this time, please welcome Chris Moore for opening comments.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for that introduction, Tony. As he said, my name is Chris Moore. I'm an assistant to the county administrator serving the Lellman community. We want to thank you for joining us tonight to provide your input on this project. The county commissioners have made Lellman a high priority area over the last several years. This has been demonstrated through the creation of the first community redevelopment area in unincorporated Pinellas County, right here in Lellman, and other significant projects along the way, including the acquisition of the Lellman Exchange Community Center, right in the vicinity of this project we'll be here discussing tonight, which is a very important portion of the CRA and in many ways the heart of our redevelopment investment strategy. In addition to this project, we've got the Joe's Creek Trail project in our capital improvement project list, and several other projects in the vicinity that we really believe will help uplift this area, and we're beginning to see some of that progress now with additional investments here to come. So we again thank you for your time here tonight, and with that, I'll turn it back over to Tony.
Thanks, Chris. We're now going to play a recorded slideshow that will fill you in on this great community improvement project. If you would, just please give me a few seconds while we tee it up.
Good evening. This presentation will provide an overview of the 46th Avenue North Sidewalk Improvement Project from 49th Street North to 37th Street North. This is in addition to a similar project on 46th Avenue North between the 55th Street North drainage outfall to the 49th Street North. Both projects are funded by the Penny for Pinellas, which has brought many improvements to our communities. This presentation will include the following 6 topics: project location, background, goals, alternatives studied, comparison matrix, and schedule. The need for this project was identified in the 2019 Lincoln-Leelman Action Plan. The project is located in Leelman, Florida, along 46th Avenue North, from 49th Street North, and continues east for approximately 1 mile to 37th Street North. The county is currently at the 100% design phase of a similar sidewalk project along 46th Avenue North, west of 49th Street North. 46th Avenue North was identified as a focus corridor in the Lincoln-Leelman Action Plan. The 46th Avenue North sidewalk improvements includes complete street themes and provides mobility and accessibility for all transportation modes, especially pedestrians and bicycles. The main goals for this sidewalk improvement project are to improve safety and provide connectivity to local parks, future Joe's Creek Trail, and businesses on 49th Street. The proposed sidewalks are consistent with the sidewalks in the current design section west of 49th Street. The existing 46th Avenue roadway is classified as a rural typical section with two 10-foot travel lanes, roadside swales, and a 5-foot sidewalk on the south side. The facility has a posted speed limit of 30 miles per hour. The roadway was resurfaced in 2018 and a mid-block pedestrian crossing was added at Neary Park. Alternative 1 includes the addition of an 8-foot sidewalk on the north side of 46th Avenue and the addition of a 5-foot sidewalk on the south side between 49th Street and 46th Street North. The existing swales may be replaced with curb and gutter to provide positive drainage. Alternative 2 includes the same 8-foot and 5-foot sidewalk described in Alternative 1, with 2 feet of roadway widening to accommodate 11-foot travel lanes. A comparison matrix evaluates the two alternatives based on costs, roadway impacts, drainage impacts, environmental impacts, safety improvements, and utility impacts. Alternative 1 has the least cost and minimizes impacts to the existing facility. Alternative 2 has the highest roadway impacts because of the widening and the reconstruction of the road. Environmental impacts are low for both alternatives due to no impacts to Joe's Creek and the lack of wetlands within the project limits. Safety is improved for both alternatives by providing sidewalk connectivity and additional lighting. Alternative 1 increases safety, minimizes impacts to the resurfaced roadway, and reduces construction duration. Alternative 2 increases safety, however, the roadway reconstruction extends the construction duration. The wider 11-foot travel lanes may cause increased driver speeds through the project limits. A 7-foot parking lane on the south side of 46 was considered. However, it was removed from the alternatives due to the required right-of-way acquisition from private properties. The project is funded for Pinellas County's fiscal year 2025-2026. The project has completed a preliminary engineering report and will proceed to the design phase following this project information meeting. Thank you for your attendance. A copy of this presentation with audio will be posted to the project website at www.pinellascounty.org/46AVE sidewalk.
Okay, I'm now going to introduce the panelists who are here tonight to answer your questions about the project. First, the project manager from Pinellas County Public Works, Scott Baird. Scott, you can turn your camera on and say hello.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Scott Baird, Pinellas County Capital Improvements Division, Transportation Engineering Project Manager. I've been with the county 20 years, so I'm looking forward to working with the community for a great project.
Great, and thanks, Scott. And please meet our consultant project manager, Jason Dunn. Hi, Jason.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jason Dunn. I work for Hardesty in Hanover, and as Scott and Tony said, I'm the engineering design consultant for the project.
Thanks, Jason. Also from Pinellas County Public Works, we have Aaron Lawson. Hi, Aaron.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Aaron Lawson, the manager of the Transportation Engineering section of the Capital Improvement Division Public Works.
Okay, Aaron, we're having just a little bit of difficulty hearing you. Can you repeat that again, please?
Yes, sir. I'm Aaron Lawson. Is that better?
That's better.
Okay, I'm the section manager for the Transportation Engineering section of the Capital Improvements Division.
Great, thank you. We like to have a subject matter expert moderate the Q&A portion of these meetings. And tonight we have Joan Rice from Pinellas County Transportation Planning. Hi, Joan.
Hi there. Hi, everybody. Thank you for inviting us. As Tony mentioned earlier, we're going to first take questions typed into the Q&A. Just click on the Q&A button in the toolbar and type in your question. After we go through all the typed questions, we're going to take questions or comments from anybody who wants to speak. We'll take phone calls first and then raised hands. If you call in by phone and you want to speak, please press *9 on your keypad. If you're on Zoom, you can click on the raised hand button. So here is our first question. The question is, will the road, I'm getting an echo. Is everybody okay? Okay, I'll start over again. The first question is, will the road still be accessible while under construction? Scott, will you please answer that question?
Yes, the road will still be accessible during construction. The phasing of the construction can be staged to allow for motorists to still utilize the roadway.
Okay, thank you very much. The next question is going to be for Jason. Is there enough room between the property lines and the roadway?
Okay, so based on the typical sections that we've shown, all of the sidewalk improvements will occur within the county's 60-foot right-of-way. So there's room from the back of sidewalk to the property line for proper tie-down measures so that no properties are impacted with our design.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't show any more questions, so let's just wait a few minutes to see if there's anybody else that would like to type in a question. I still see no questions typed in, so we're going to move forward. At this time, we're going to take questions or comments from anybody who is called in. Again, if you joined by phone and want to ask a question, please press *9 on your keypad. Okay, while we're waiting, I'm getting questions typed in now. So going back to some of the typed questions, but please push *9 if you are interested in speaking. The next question is, so all utilities will be moved closer to the road? Jason?
So currently in design, the utilities that we've seen on the corridor, most of them are overhead electric and underground fiber optic. So based on our improvements, the utilities may be relocated, or there might be an opportunity for them to remain in place. That's something that we'll determine as we get further into the design phase. As far as them being moved closer to the road, most likely the answer to that is no, that they will stay kind of on the perimeter of the project near the right of way.
Okay, thank you. Next question is, how long is this project going to take? Scott?
Until we have a final design, we can't say for sure, but based on the proposed alternatives, I would say that alternative 1, you can expect a construction duration of around 15 months, and alternative 2, with the road rebuild for the widening, could push that duration to up to 24 months.
Okay, thank you. Waiting for any more typed questions. Okay, we'll leave the questions open if you'd like to type in later. In the meantime, is there anybody from a phone call that would like to ask a question?
Joan, it looks like we don't have any participants who called in. We do have some participants who have joined via Zoom. And if you would like to ask a question or offer a comment, just go ahead and click the raised hand button. That should be at the bottom of your screen in the toolbar. If you're on a mobile device, it may be at the top. So we have a question from Darlene Karakas. And if I didn't pronounce that right, go ahead and correct me. And you'll need to unmute yourself, Darlene.
Sorry, you're still muted.
There's a little microphone icon at the bottom of your screen.
Tony, is that in the bottom left corner?
Bottom left corner of your screen, there's it'll say mute, and it should have a line through it. Just click on that, and that'll allow you to speak. Joan, let's go to Darlene. We'll come back to you. Let's go to David Lee. David Lee would like to ask a question or offer a comment.
Mr. Lee, whenever you're ready.
And Mr. Lee, you would also have to unmute yourself.
Okay, it appears that we're not getting any audio from them.
Okay, Carla and Mark, you're both in the background. Do you see anything that would prevent either one of our citizens from being able to speak?
Well, I'm seeing something here that Mr. Lee is using an older version of Zoom. So I guess we're having an issue with that. And he did type into the comment box, no mic unmuted option. So Mr. Lee, there's you may either call in or you can type your question in just like you typed in us informing us that you were not able to talk. And in the meantime, I did receive another typed in question. So this question is your 60-foot leeway from the middle of the road? Jason?
Yes, so the total width of the right of way is 60 feet. So that would be 30 feet measured from the center line of the road or the middle of the road.
Thank you.
Well, let's try Darlene Carricus again. I have a button here that allows me to ask you to unmute, and then you would go down to the microphone icon at the bottom of your screen and click that. Okay, it doesn't look like we're able to open up the audio for Darlene. Darlene, would you like to type your comment or question into the Q&A?
No, she may not have a mic either.
We do have someone who's called in by phone. Now, the number 9200 that ends in 9200, if you press *9 on your keypad, I should be able to unmute you.
Okay, he is up, but he's muted.
Hey there.
There. Welcome. Please ask your question.
Sure. David Lee here. Sorry, I didn't have the unmute option on the video call. But first, I just wanted to say, hey, thank you to everyone for this early opportunity prior to the design to provide feedback. That's much appreciated, and we certainly look forward to more of that. Secondly, I would say it's really nice to see our Linking Loman plan taken seriously with the Pinellas County project. That's very refreshing. But I did have some feedback, and I hope you'll consider my feedback and my neighbor's feedback. Hopefully you'll get more at the upcoming CRA meeting. But one thing really strikes me here, looking through these alternatives, and it's kind of the elephant in the room, and that's the inclusion of these swales. in both designs, I think. And, the other name for a swale, obviously, is a ditch. And I'm very surprised to see ditch drainage as a part of both of these alternatives. And, we're in the 21st century here now, and we figured out all these different ways to move water. I'm very surprised that we've decided to go with ditch drainage for at least a portion of this. Those ditches in our community after sidewalks, ditches are a close second as far as like the number 2 complaint. And the reason for that is, those ditches attract trash. It's a sign of, it's kind of a sign of poverty. My property is 4 blocks from St. Pete, and you're in Lowman when you see those ditches. And it's just really surprising to see that included here. I've been following this project now for several years. I've had a lot of interactions with, staff and engineers from time to time, and I had never heard anything about ditches. I mean, there was a debate about raised curb, but I never knew that ditches were on the table. So I'd like it if somebody could speak first to that specific point.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Jason was wondering if you could maybe put up the cross section and then talk about the swales.
Okay. All right. Is everyone seeing alternative 1?
Yes.
Okay. So, a lot of this project, kind of the determination of whether or not there will be a curb drainage system or an open swale will really depend on the elevations at the right-of-way line and how much space that we have left. In some areas, there's going to need additional space to get to this back of sidewalk, and that will limit the amount of space between the sidewalk and the roadway. So we really won't know exactly until we get into design whether or not it will be a curb section or a swale. One of the benefits of swale drainage, it's part of Pinellas County's green infrastructure, is to maintain swales where possible. They do provide a water quality benefit. They do an excellent job of removal of oils and greases from the roadway. So there's a benefit from that from an environmental standpoint. They also promote infiltration. So they also function as a flooding protection, especially when you're against the road. So there are some benefits to swales, and I think we could work with a landscaping architect to kind of beautify these swales during the design process, and maybe eliminate some of the aesthetic negative aesthetics of a swale that maybe that's not properly maintained or sodded or that or whatever that may be. So but
well, that's a good point that you bring up about maintenance, and it's not well known, but in the county, code enforcement has no jurisdiction to require the adjacent property owner to maintain the area between the curb and the beginning of the property line. And so that's different than a lot of communities where you have to maintain that area. And so what we get is, particularly with ditches, is, the property owner does not maintain them, so they become overgrown. They, attract trash, and they look terrible. It's one of the things we're trying to get away from. And this slide you put up is a lot more pleasing than the cross sections that I've seen in the PER. And so, the point of beautification in that little 5-foot area, that's something we want to do. That's something we could probably get our CRA board to fund, but we can't landscape an area that's serving a drainage purpose. And, you know, those areas will not be maintained. They'll be difficult to maintain. It'll be a continuation of this overgrown, disheveled look that we have here. And that's, I think, what everyone's trying to get away from. So I think that's a real issue here. And we also have some practical matters. We have automated trash service now. And so our community needs a little space there that's level to place their trash cans for automated pickup. If you have a swale there, and it's not depicted in this slide, but it's depicted in some of the other ones, that's obviously not an ideal spot to put your trash can. So, I mean, did raised curb come up at any point in your deliberations? I think that was the ultimate goal here.
So
Go
I
ahead,
guess
Jason.
I guess I'd like to defer to maybe either Scott or Aaron, but as far as the maintenance of the right of way, I think
Aaron?
Yeah, if I could chime in here. As far as the swale goes, you know, it is not a ditch by any means. It would be very shallow. There would be a flat area adjacent to the roadway. You know, that would allow space for any garbage receptacles, of course. And it would, in most cases, be grassed. But as Jason explained, there is opportunities to put some type of vegetation in there. And this is, as he also alluded to, a way to clean the water and the runoff, to treat the water before it goes to the outfall. Now, we
So, I
can't
mean,
tell you. I'm
I
sorry.
mean, is that what the real issue is, treating the water? Because, I mean, I have a feeling that's what it is with this giant sidewalk. Is that the real issue here? Is that we don't have anywhere to treat the water?
Well, treating the water is the issue for any roadway we put in, any impervious area, which would be concrete or asphalt. Now, the sidewalk is not going to have the oils and the runoff that we get up from the road. So the sidewalk is not, runoff is not needed treatment for that reason, but it is impervious. So we do need to look at all those factors when we look at the drainage.
Well, just to throw it out there, you know, I've seen these two ponds that are proposed, one at the corner of 46th and 46th. I'd like to know, is that included in 1 and 2? And then secondly, is the expansion of the existing pond that's at our park entrance? Or is that a part of the plan for both of these proposals?
So that's something that we'll have to look into design. The kind of need for the water quality treatment is something that we'll look at. And basically, when you fill in a ditch, you are marginally taking away the existing sort of water quality treatment that the runoff gets in that swale. So when we do fill in the ditch, like it's shown on the left side here with the 8-foot sidewalk, you know,
Yeah, I get that. But you have two major issues with both of those ponds. The first, at 46 and 46, sticking a retention pond right there would be super ugly. I mean, ugly. It would have a guardrail around it because it's next to a road and have a fence. And we all know how Pinellas County takes care of those ponds. They fill up with primrose and cattails, and that's not moving this community forward. Secondly, and more important, that proposed location is where our Pinellas Trail extension crosses the road. And I think it's important to know the history on the reason for that. The community fought hard to get that change made. And the whole story is really a great example of Pinellas County listening to residents and being very creative and coming up with a solution that worked and that everybody was happy with. And that solution was the trail crosses right there on that little strip of land. And that was a long hard fought battle, and it was a great outcome for us. And then now to see a pond proposed for that location, that to me would be going backwards. And so I just hope that you all are aware that that's going to meet a lot of resistance. And then secondly, on that pond expansion over there at the park, we have playground equipment scheduled to go there. The major deficiency with Rainieri Park is that it's hidden from the neighborhood, and we need more of a connection with the park to the neighborhood, not less of a connection. That existing pond, has everybody seen that pond in the last year or the last 3 years? Have you guys seen it?
Yes.
I think it's actually in there. Just look at that pond. Like, that's the definition of blight. And now I'm seeing a proposal to make that pond bigger and space that we need to bleed the park into the neighborhood so that the neighborhood can see the benefits of that park. And, you know, that's something you see all over St. Petersburg. The parks bleed into the neighborhood. That's the last place we need to be expanding retention. And just so you're aware, the county owns 4 parcels that are not that park, right on that roadway, all of which are suitable for nice looking retention. And so it's not like we can't look elsewhere to find retention. But using that park and using that corner, that's not moving forward, at least from the community perspective. So I'd like to put that out there.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. This is Chris Moore here, and we certainly understand your concerns with those 2 locations for retention. And as Mr. Dunn and our staff have indicated, you know, those final determinations will be made during the design process. And there is, unfortunately, a need for us to address this retention issue in one way or another. We certainly will do our best based on the feedback we've given you. We do want to point out, I believe, as you know, we do have a project in the works right now to clean up that pond at 46th and 46th. I mean, excuse me, at 46th in the Neary Park entrance. So you should be seeing that work come online later this year. If there is any expansion of that pond, it would not encroach upon the sidewalk or the playground equipment that is also scheduled to go in there that will, as you say.
So you're taking away usable, very important usable land that bleeds the park into the neighborhood. And that's the concern. And I'd just like that to be on the record. You know, there's a ton of locations for retention on county-owned properties that aren't the park and that aren't that corner. And it's kind of a gamble just to say, oh, it's going to be handled in the design phase. You know, we want to see something more concrete prior to then. You know, that would be ideal. You know, and just another point about the curbing, the debate over the curbing was we have a big illegal parking problem in the right of way in our community. And it's not for lack of parking, it's just for convenience. And so the raised curbing eliminates that. So that by utilizing raised curbing, that actually eliminates one of our pain points in our neighborhood. So I really think that it would be productive to look at using raised curbing. It's also safer for pedestrians on the sidewalk. And so that should be really important as well. And with regard to the sidewalk, I think the big concern, at least the concern I've heard from my neighbors, is the impact to our trees. There's a huge impact to our trees, and if you take a look at the survey the trees that are overlaid on that survey, the trees aren't all marked. Some of them are marked, some of them aren't. Some of them are not identified. And so we'd like to know what the impacts are to our mature growth trees prior to deciding to put that sidewalk so close to the property line to accommodate those ditches. You know, could someone speak to, is there a proper tree survey that we could look at so we could quantify that? Because I can just tell you, on my property alone, there's 2 grand oaks that are beautiful. They provide energy efficiency to my house, and they also add value to the neighborhood with the canopy. And you're sticking a giant sidewalk really close to property lines. You know, I know one of my neighbors, I think, has 8 trees that would be impacted. So what is the impact of trees, and do you have a completed proper tree survey?
We're going to go ahead and ask Jason if the tree study has been done yet.
So I believe we have a preliminary survey on hand, and we'll be reviewing the survey and all of the trees when we get into design. The county's arborist will get involved, and we'll look at site-specific locations where, if needed, we can, you know, meander the sidewalk to potentially miss a tree, and that way, you know, the tree is saved and the sidewalk can still remain. There's also an opportunity to, you know, change the width of the sidewalk around a tree, you know, maybe some flexibility there. So those are all great comments that we can carry into design.
And Jason.
Oh, well, I'm not done yet.
Okay, we do have to answer some other questions too, so go ahead
Sure.
and
You can
go
come
ahead
back
and
later.
ask a quick one.
No, you can come back to me later.
Okay. Jason, will the community have a chance to see the design plans and be part of that process as well? Or maybe Scott?
That might be a better question for Scott, but I anticipate we will have another public involvement opportunity.
Okay. Let me go ahead and ask a couple other questions that have come in type, that have been typed in. First one is, I believe my property line to the road is only 10 feet. Does this mean my fence will have to be moved now? Scott, could you answer that, please?
Yes, I actually saw that question and I was opening the survey. Based on the measured dimensions on the survey, I'm showing your property line being 22 foot from the edge of pavement. So depending on what our final design is, your sidewalk may not be impacted. We just can't say for sure yet. It does look like it encroaches a touch into the right of way, but it may be something we could work around once we get into design.
Okay, thank you. The next question is not really a question, it's just a comment. And it came up when we started talking about the swales, and the question is that they also attract mosquitoes. So I just want to make sure that that's in the record as well. We do have another raised hand. So
Joe, may I interrupt for just a moment, and this will kind of speak to the mosquito question as well. Jason, would you mind turning off your screen, and I'll share a picture of a recently constructed project where we used a swale with a pipe underneath it, and you can see where the ditch bottom inlets are. But I would like for our audience to see, you know, what a swale it is. In no way really relatable to a ditch, especially what's out there today. And I hope this will help create a better visual. Obviously, it's not the same type of project, but this shows you where
that's awful.
And it's very shallow. And then you can see where we need inlets, we place the inlets.
thank you, Erin. So there's not standing water except when there's a storm.
That's exactly right. Yes, it gets the water off of the road and out of the ditch as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you. I do have another raised hand. Mr. Jeremy Heath. Mr. Heath, you'll need to unmute so that you can ask your question.
Carla, Joan, I believe Mr. Heath may have also called in on 7435. And if that's you, Mr. Heath, I'm going to unmute you right now. You'll need, actually, you have to unmute yourself. I clicked the button to allow yourself to unmute.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
So I first off, appreciate you all taking the time to present this. I guess some update will also be provided next week at the CRA meeting, so I'm sure we can have a little bit more time to talk about this more fully. My biggest win about this is I know, one of the big elephants in the room is the two developments that have taken place on 46th Avenue or lack thereof with the Oasis Acres and Greenway Lofts properties. And I know that one of the sticking points, for that development was who is going to pay for sidewalks to go in. And I know going forward, there is going to be conversation about what we want to do with, potentially rezoning or redeveloping, those properties on 46th Avenue. And the fact that we're going to be ready to build, so to speak, with sidewalks there, I think is a huge win. And, you fast forward 5 years from now, I think that is a really great opportunity. And I just wanted to voice that opinion. The resident, Mr. Lee, I also think does bring up a fairly valid point. And I would urge you to consider, if we do have to go the route of ditches, evaluating what has happened on both 58th Avenue and 62nd Avenue, where there are ditches. It's a part of the CRA plan. Ditches are addressed as not just a impending pedestrian access to residential units, but also create significant safety issues, especially during times of significant rainfall. It is in the CRA plan. Ditches are deeply unpopular, pun intended. And with the convenience store that is just down the street there from the Oasis Acres property, my fear is that you'll have residents that go to that convenience store, walk to Neary Park, and throw their trash in the ditch, and you could have a trash issue down the road. Now, I'll just end with, I'm very respectful to green solutions to runoff. So Mr. Dunn, I completely agree with your sentiment that this is a more eco-friendly way to handle runoff as opposed to just storm ditches or storm drains, However, I would strongly encourage that whenever we do get to site plans and more concrete plans, we do include landscaping in that proposal if ditches are the best alternative. And with that, thanks for listening to me. And like I said, I look forward to maybe next week.
Thank you, Mr. Heath.
Joan, we have a comment or a question from Darlene Carricus. I know she's been trying to get in. Darlene, I'm going to try to admit you again, and you have to, once I click that button, you have to unclick your little microphone icon at the bottom of your screen. Okay. It doesn't look like, for whatever reason, we're able to provide audio to you at this time, but we're very interested in receiving your feedback and input, and we'll talk about how that can happen here in a minute. Joan, I don't see any more questions.
I don't see any more questions in the chat box. Do we need to ask for anybody else to push *9 for call-ins? And I think that Mr. Lee has a follow-up question that he would like to ask. Hold on, Mr. Lee.
Okay, Mr. Lee, you should be able to speak.
Hold on.
Yeah, thank
go.
you.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, the other major concern is placement of the sidewalk. I think it's mostly 2 feet from the property line. Have you evaluated pushing that back a little bit? The concern there being there's a lot of visual screening buffers along that roadway on the north side. And, we have a nursery with a really nice entrance. And, those screening buffers are important because they provide security to the residents. It's noise reduction, among other things, and the landscaping adds to the community. Have you done, or are you willing to do maybe an informal survey to see how that sidewalk is going to impact those screening buffers, and maybe look at the possibility of a change? It could be that maybe just a couple feet would reduce the impact significantly to the neighboring residents.
Thank you. Scott, if you could unmute yourself, and could you tell us about possibly doing any kind of a survey ahead of time so that we know where the existing landscaping is, and will you be able to work around the area with the sidewalk?
Well, as always, during design, we try to work around as much green infrastructure as possible, specifically trees or canopies that provide kind of a buffer between the roadway and people's residences. And it really will be a case-by-case basis as we work through the design process on where the sidewalk will have to be in certain locations.
Okay, thank you. Actually, what we do is we do a sidewalk matrix during the design. So we look at every location and see where would be the best place for the sidewalk.
I guess, Joan and Mr. Lee, just to add to that, we do have criteria based on AASHTO and Florida Green Book of how much width we're required to have from the face of the curb to the sidewalk. So for the 8-foot side, we need a minimum of 5 feet from the face of the curb to the starting the front of the sidewalk.
But I mean, isn't it
what we call
true, following up on your comments earlier, that a lot of those utilities are going to stay in place, so there's going to be no reason for the space for a tie down, negating the need for 5 feet? Is that true to say? So it could shift maybe in some areas?
Well, I guess the shift, we can shift it away from the right of way. But we do, I guess wanted to point out, we do have a limit of how close we can shift that sidewalk to the face of the curb or to the edge of the travel lane. And that's really all driven by safety. And then kind of like Scott was mentioning earlier, it will be case by case. I know you mentioned the nursery, that definitely has a lot of need to have the sidewalk as far away from the right of way as possible. So we did see that in our field reviews, and we'll kind of keep note of that during design.
And
I think the concern is not aiming away from the property lines. Is that what you meant to say?
Correct.
So could you say it again?
So the possibility does exist that that sidewalk does not have to be 5 feet in every section. That's just a preferred alternative, right?
So the minimum sidewalk width is 5 feet. The 8 feet was added to accommodate some bicycles along with pedestrians.
No, the minimum width of from the edge of curb.
The green strip.
Correct. That's a minimum 5 feet if we use a curb.
But it is negotiable if there's no utilities or you want to go around something.
That would require a design variance if we needed to do that. So that's something we try to avoid, especially this early in the design.
But it's something you're willing to consider.
But typically utilities will not drive a reason for it to be moved closer to the roadway. And mainly this is a safety reason.
And the reason is the safety for the pedestrian to be away from the travel lane. So we want to keep that.
Yeah, I understand
distance.
that. Yeah, I
And then-
understand that, but the
And all of the utilities, if they do need to be relocated, will be relocated in the county's right of way. I think that's something that we always maintain.
well, yeah, of course, but in this situation, they would be relocated to the edge of the road.
The utilities will be looked at on a case-by-case basis, as well as the sidewalks. Like Joan was mentioning, the matrix, we're gonna go through and we'll look at any, we'll look at where the sidewalk is placed and the ultimate condition for safety and to meet all requirements. And then we'll go through and we'll look at every place where it encroaches on something or where there's a.
Would you agree that a barrier curb is safer for pedestrians than a Miami curb?
It all depends on the speed and other factors that we're all looking at during design.
I mean, if the speed was 30 miles per hour, would you agree that a raised curb is safer?
We're going to be
for
looking at all this
pedestrians?
very closely during design. As we stated, there is no set determination as to which type of curb or where the curb will be located. We do plan on keeping the community involved as we get into design. And we really do appreciate your comments, and this will be considered during design.
I've got a couple of things, Mr. Lee. The distance away all is bared on the type of curb that's there as well as the speed. So the 5 foot is what is required for that particular curb. And I believe Scott Baird also has something he'd like to add.
Yeah, thank you, Joan. Just for a little background, Mr. Lee, I have been the county's utility coordinator for the last 13 years. I've worked with Duke quite often on these type of projects, and knowing the facilities they have out there, it's not transmission, it's just distribution. Their preference and ours when it comes to a design variance for safety, we would have them move their poles back to the right of way. So we could keep the sidewalk far enough off the road for pedestrian safety. And they honestly prefer to have their poles as far away from the road as possible as well.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
Just one final thing. If you've read the strategic plan for Lillman, one of the things in there that will shock you is the broadband gap here. It's crazy. And so I guess the question is about undergrounding and fiber. Have you considered undergrounding anything? And have you discussed or considered getting fiber laid down when you're digging everything up, in just a small effort to close that gap?
Okay. Aaron, is that something that you can answer?
I can answer this, and I'm going to let Scott jump in with his expertise as well as needed. But we don't control the private utilities. We can't tell them where to put their lines or how to put it, except for giving them, telling them that they need to move it when we have an improvement that needs to come through. So we can't, say that there's going to be better cables coming through or where they would be located.
Scott?
Yeah, we cannot dictate to speak to the first one would be the undergrounding of the overhead lines for specifically Duke. We can't dictate to them whether their lines can be overhead or underground. They are bound by the Public Service Commission to provide their facility as financially feasible as possible. I can't think of a better word right now, but they're bound by tariffs where they can't just bury everything because then costs go up too high for the customers. In terms of having fiber added, I'd like to talk about that with you next week. It may be something that I have some contacts at Verizon, Frontier, Spectrum, and it could be an area of expansion opportunity for them based on public desire to have those facilities. But I'd be happy to speak with you.
Yeah, that'd be
it.
awesome. And yeah, we have some drops already in the neighborhood, so could be a good opportunity there.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. Darlene, again, if you'd like to ask a question, If you go to the bottom of your screen and hit the Q&A button, you should be able to type your question in. I'm so sorry that you haven't been able to talk. Okay, we have one. Thank you. Thank you. The question is, we run a business here and has had theft. How tall of a fence can we put up to protect our equipment? I think that might be more of a question for Chris Moore, because I'm not quite sure if he knows what the allowed fence heights are.
Yeah, we'd be happy to follow up with you. It would depend on where exactly you're speaking about. Ryan, do you have any input you can add in terms of allowable fence heights? I would assume this is along 46th Avenue, fronting 46th Avenue.
Yeah, right now our code currently allows for 4 feet, but it all is dependent upon if it's a decorative fence or not. So, but the standard, a wooden stockade fence would be 4 feet.
Okay, thank you. Is it possible that she could call one of you if she wants to get more information for her specific location?
Yeah,
Sure.
Ryan, if you want to just give her your phone number, that'd be great.
Absolutely. It is 464-5642.
Okay. Will you say it one more time, please?
727-464-5642.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, I have one more comment that's been typed in. Oh, something else came in. Having Verizon would be a great added benefit. So Scott, do whatever you can. And we've got one other question is, your sidewalk will be 8 feet from our front door. Jason, have you had a chance to look at individual places to see how close the sidewalk be from front doors?
No, we have not. We've basically done our sidewalk widths in comparison to the existing right-of-way line.
Okay, so if the 8 feet number that she's saying, that's how far it is from her property line right now, because you're only going to be building in our right-of-way.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other questions? I see no more typed in. Anybody else has called in? Tony, do you see anything else?
I do not, Joe. Well, let's see. I think that David, Mr. Lee, you still have your hand up. I think we're covered, Joan.
Okay.
Tonight. So we'll go ahead and move on. As Mr. Lee and Mr. Heath pointed out, there will be a CRA meeting next Wednesday night at 6 o'clock, at which there will be a presentation on this project again, and the public is welcome to attend that. Let me put up.
Is that meeting going to be online as well, or is it only going to be at the exchange?
The CRA meeting, as I understand it, will be only in person, and the public is invited. Chris, if that's not correct, please chime in.
No, actually, it's not correct. It will be offered in person and via Zoom as well.
Okay.
So we'll have that information posted on the CRA's website.
Okay, but it won't be a Zoom meeting in this format. It'll basically just be streamed on Zoom, correct?
Correct, but folks will have the opportunity to provide questions and speak, provide comments as well.
Okay, very good. Very good. And that's at 6 o'clock next week at the Lellman Exchange.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So let's see, get my notes here. If you have any additional questions about the project, you can send an email to Scott at the contact information shown on the screen. Everybody should be able to see that. Also, Scott's number is there, and the URL, the website address is up there too. That's www.pinellascounty.org, 46th Avenue. It's 46 AVESIDEWALK, 46 Ave Sidewalk, for anybody that called in. And for anybody that called in, let me go ahead and give you Scott's number. That's 727-464-8935. And his email address is sbaird@pinellascounty.org. That's SBAIRD@pinellascounty.org. Thanks for being with us tonight. As we indicated earlier in the meeting, this is being recorded tonight, and it will be made available on the project website within a few days. It usually takes 3 or 4 days to get that posted. We hope you're as excited as we are about the improvements being made. We obviously have some more conversations that need to take place, but we're really pleased that you were able to join us tonight and ask your questions and provide your feedback. And we look forward to telling you more about this project and other projects in the community in the near future. Thank you and good night.